What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of NJ Healthy Heat, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matthew Della Rosa, and today I'm joined with somebody who has actually impacted my life. He was my trainer at the Texas Baseball Ranch. He is the head of athletic performance,
Yes,
head
sir.
of head of
The
athletic
athletics
performance,
performance coordinator. The athletics
athletic
performance coordinator.
performance coordinator over at the
Coordinator.
Texas Baseball coordinator over at the Texas Baseball Ranch. Now, the Texas Baseball Ranch is a world-renowned place, invented by Ron Woolforth, who we'll talk about throughout his, discoveries in the pitching world. They've helped, hundreds, maybe even thousands of guys at this point throw over 90 miles an hour. They've worked with some of the biggest stars that you watch on TV. They are a go-to place in the world of baseball for pitching specific. I think they're getting over to catching a little bit too, so we'll talk about that. But this is going to be a value-packed episode with nothing but content on throwing and arm health and just everything that is happening in the world of baseball as far as progressing it forward with everything that you see. So, without further ado, this is Jonathan Massey, again, a trainer to myself, and I want to give him the opportunity to just introduce yourself. So, go ahead, man. Just 2 minutes or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. You guys, I am, like Matthew said, I'm the athletic performance coordinator. I started working, people always ask me when I started out here at the Texas Baseball Ranch, and I just have to always clarify when I started training out here or when I started coaching out here, because I started training here when I was just after my freshman year in high school. So I was 15 years old and I was throwing a baseball 68 miles an hour. So for all you guys who are listening to this that, feel like you're behind the velocity curve and, not where you want to be, I lived your life for a long time. And, Coach Wolforth and the Texas Baseball Ranch were a big part of, why I was able to play college baseball and why at, you know, age 23, I was able to finally throw a baseball 90 miles an hour for the first time in my life. I had a lot of people tell me I was never going to be able to do it. And, Ron always believed in me. And so that's a big part of the reason why I kept coming back. Big part of the reasons why I, eventually joined the staff to help other guys do achieve a dream, right? And it's a passion of mine to help guys get better, whether that be just make the high school baseball team, play college baseball, play professional baseball, or get to the big leagues if that's in the cards for you. But just helping guys just get a little bit better every day. That's a burning passion of mine.
Definitely, man. No, I think it's honorable work of what you're doing, man. Again, can't emphasize enough how important you were in my overall journey. I think we spent 3 off seasons together. You were there with me every single day. I know the grind of it that you're in now,
Mhm.
being on the other side, being on the coaching side. So,
Yeah,
again, man, this is great stuff that you're doing, and I wish you nothing but the best moving
yeah,
forward. So, Texas Baseball Ranch, man, like, what is it? How do
yeah,
you describe it to people, who don't even know y'all exist yet? To the people
yeah,
who are really in tune with baseball, obviously people
yeah.
know that y'all are on the forefront. There's tread and there's drive line, but
Right.
before that, Ron Woolforth was out there doing his thing, and I think that these bigger companies are almost a child of what maybe the Texas Baseball Ranch has given the baseball community. So kind of
Yeah,
describe what the baseball ranch is.
yeah. So, I mean, even before Ron, there was guys like Paul Nyman and Tom House, and
Tom
those
House.
guys brought a lot of changes in the baseball community. So, you know, I'm gonna do my best to kind of give you, kind of Ron's story a little bit. If I misspeak, that's just because I'm not
You're
Ron,
not
and
Ron.
so yeah. But Ron, played college baseball. Started in Western Nebraska. Then he went to the University of Nebraska and realized he was um, not as good as he needed to be over there. And so, but eventually he ended up playing at five schools in 5 years, and he finished at Sam Houston
Dang,
State.
Ron.
Yeah, yeah.
Before
So
before the transfer portal.
before transfer portal and before NIL deals. So yeah, but back in his day, it was always, the big problem was like if you want it bad enough, you work hard enough, it's going to work out. And Ron was always like, I worked really hard, I wanted it really bad, and it just didn't work out for me. And so that kind of started him down this path of why didn't it work out for myself? And that's just kind of been a burning passion of his, is figuring out what could have helped him better, back in his day. And then, he's has a He's one of the smartest person I know. He has done a phenomenal job kind of bridging the gap between the medical community and the baseball community. And so that's just kind of where our kind of niche is. And then from, like I said, from that passion, he has just slowly been asking those next questions, like, studying guys like Nolan Ryan, Sandy Koufax, Greg Maddux, Roger Clemens. All these guys are just studying on what those guys, what movements they do well and what makes them, stay healthy and, perform at a high level. And, you watch them long enough, you start to notice things that they all kind of do similarly. And then it was like, okay, if these are the things that they're doing, that all of them are doing, well, we need to be trying to teach those things. And then how do I teach those things becomes the next question. And that's been where we're at here at the Texas Baseball Ranch. And, I think the one question that we always get when guys show up and is like, holy crap, it's actually a property. Like, people view we're a warehouse facility, like we just call ourselves the Texas Baseball Ranch. Now we sit on 20 acres, and if you look in my back here, you can see our big red barn. It's our theater, and so we have 20 acres here for guys to do a lot of things out here. But we are an actual ranch property per se.
Definitely, man. And y'all have made some updates since I was out there, man. Y'all have definitely done some things to the place to kind of make it look nicer. I think y'all got rid of the
Yeah.
pool. The pool is now gone, and y'all put a, outdoor tin roof thing out
Yeah.
there, right? What
Yeah.
have
So
y'all
we
done
have.
out there?
So, um, was what years were you here? So I can get a better. Like, I think you were here what,
I was
2018,
there
2019.
2017 through 2020.
Yeah.
2017 to
Okay.
2020. Yeah.
Okay. So that you would have seen the Big Red Barn. That 2017 would
Yep.
have been the first time the Big Red Barn would have been open.
Yep.
The next thing that would have been built that you probably didn't see is that we have a pavilion. It's like um, probably 40 or 50 feet wide by 120 feet long. So it's a massive pavilion area that's turfed where we can throw outside now. Much better. So, like, you didn't have to experience it because you're here during the fall and winter times with your schedule. But, like, in the summer times, throwing in those silver barns that you threw in, oh my God, was it just absolutely just so hot. I'd be like doing
Love
a
it.
lesson and I'm like just like falling asleep just because I was just so hot in this thing. So now we have this open air pavilion that is just amazing to have guys throw in and be able to coach guys in. And it's just so much better than throwing in those silver buildings. Then now we're actually now building a new office currently.
Nice.
So that little red barn that you saw as you pulled in, is that thing's gone. Our new building should be probably done in the next month or so. But yeah, so
Y'all needed
that's
that.
the new.
Y'all needed that. That
Yeah.
was too small for y'all. Y'all were fitting like three or four people in there, dude.
Yeah. And then we added another silver barn on the backside where Gary used to do his hitting in. Now it's kind of our pitching lab. We call it our pro barn because where typically all of our professional players kind of work out of. But
Yep.
we use it for camps and stuff too. So, but yeah, and then there's some other things in the works that are going to be here probably in the next couple of years. But I'll save that for another time.
Love it, man. Yeah, love it. Love the growth that the program and that the company is taking, and can't wait to see what's going on there.
Yeah.
So, kind of give me the rundown, man, of like what y'all do over there. Obviously, y'all have your own philosophy. Everybody has to kind of buy in almost into what Ron had started over there, and it's not even almost a buy-in. It's like you saw it firsthand, so you
Yeah.
lived it, and you're like, okay, like this works. I'm just gonna go
Yeah.
help more people do this. So, like, what is it that y'all are teaching? Why is it that you're able to get so many guys to throw 90 miles an hour? Why is it that guys are flying in from all over the world to come train with you guys? Like, what have y'all figured out that maybe the rest of the baseball community hasn't quite figured out yet?
I don't know if the base. I don't know if the baseball community hasn't figured it out. I just don't think they place maybe as great as importance on it as we do, and we start with arm health and durability. That's what we do. Um, I don't know if anybody will say that they do it better than we do, but our philosophy is we're going to we start with the, we start we our saying is we start with the pain. So everybody that comes into our facility, whether they are for a boot camp or for a lesson or as a professional guy, we ask them, hey, when you get done pitching, where do you typically feel it at in your arm? Okay. and they'll point, oh, I feel it here, or I feel it in my elbow. Okay. And then we just scale it 0 to 10. 10 is like, oh my God, need to see a doctor. 0 is no discomfort at all. And I would say the average score is somewhere between a 4 to a 6. And most guys think nothing of that. Like, oh, it's just typical. I'm throwing, I'm doing enough. It's just it's how it has to be. Like pitching is pain, right? And that's you know, uh, the overarching kind of philosophy that's most prevalent in this game today. Probably is you're going to score, right? And so we go, well, what happens if we can find a way to get that 6 arm pain or 6 arm discomfort down to a 2? If we can do that, do you think you're going to throw it a little bit harder? And the answer is, for most people, is yeah, maybe 1, maybe 2. But yeah, that's what we do. So we'll put guys through our video analysis, our mechanical efficiency assessment. We'll put guys through a physical assessment. So we're looking at ankle mobility, T-spine mobility, scaps, all that stuff, all in an effort to try to minimize, reduce, eliminate as much arm discomfort as we can. And yes, of course, there's always going to be some level of discomfort. We're just trying to minimize, reduce, and eliminate it. And if we can get that down to a low enough level, right, then we can start to do things like the velocity enhancement and stuff like that. I think that's probably like, one of the biggest things in the baseball world is like, okay, I've got to throw hard. We know we got to throw hard. I mean, it's been like a 15-year, 20-year rise where the average velocity in the big leagues is going
Got
up, right?
to, got
Yeah,
to,
and
man.
so
Dude's in
and
single A, just
so
throwing 100.
yeah, and then you can say the same thing probably about college, and the same thing probably about high school. I mean, man, it's crazy. I was talking with one of our pro guys the other day, and when I was in high school, and granted, I graduated in 2009, so it's not like I graduated that many years ago. But when I graduated, like if you saw a guy touching nine, like that guy was throwing fuel. Like
Yeah.
that guy was from like most guys in the area were
Everybody around
probably
the county knew him.
yeah, most guys in the air on the team in the area were probably throwing anywhere from probably 86 to 88 was probably on the top end. Most guys were probably like 84 to 87, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's just how it was. But now it's like if you don't have a guy, at least one guy on your team throwing it 89 to 92 in high school, you're probably a below average high school baseball program in this Houston area. Okay. So but so so they're all trying to throw it harder, and so they're all racing to get to that velocity. They're like, oh, okay, let me get on a radar gun, let me do it right. And so they're racing to try to gain velo, and we say, wait. Let's take care of the arm first. I know it might be a little bit slower of a process, but let's take care of the arm first. And then when the arm feels good, not only will you just gain a few from that, but we'll have a better foundation to gain velo so that you not only stay healthy while you do it, but you gain sustainable velo that you can have for the rest of your career, hopefully, not just 5 miles an hour for the next 3 months and then your arm's killing you.
Yeah, no, dude, I'm interested because like in today's age where everything on social media, and I've been guilty of it too, like people want to see people throw hard, and like,
Yeah.
as a trainer, over at the Texas Baseball Ranch, people want to see that you guys are getting guys throwing 90 miles an hour, but it's hard to showcase the boring, insignificant work that goes into that because that's not necessarily what people want to see. That doesn't get
Yeah, that doesn't
people
sell.
to come to, yeah, that doesn't get people to come to the ranch. But
Yeah.
once they get there and you guys are putting the wrist weights on them, you guys are going through the assessment, you guys are going through the sock, you guys are getting the Durthrow going. Like, how do you convince a kid in high school who's being told, like, hey, if I want to go play big time ball, I got to throw 90 miles an hour. I'm at 80. I'll sell my soul to get that 10 miles an hour. Meanwhile, it's like, dude, your soul ain't worth, arm pain
Yeah.
for the next 10 years. So how do you get them to buy into like, hey, it might take 6 to 12 months to get us to where we need to be, and then we can push on the gas pedal here. What is y'all's philosophy
Uh,
there?
yeah, I mean, for us, it just starts with the introductions. Like, it starts, when they first get here, we tell them what we're about and we tell them this. And thankfully, I would say probably more so than any other facility. I don't really know, what other facilities do, but we probably get the parents involved as much or more than most facilities. So almost always is a parent sitting right next to the young man And so it's fairly easy to convince the parents of that philosophy than it is necessarily to convince the kids of that philosophy. Now, that being said, you do have to convince them a little bit. I think for me, when I get a new client and I have the first couple weeks of it, my goal is to have a small win in the first probably 2 or 3 weeks. Meaning, can I you know can we start with their arm pain? Let's say it's a 6. Can I get that to a 4 in 2 to 3 weeks? Like just a small win for that guy and create buy-in. Now, if he's already like, let's say he's a 2 or a 3, right? And maybe that's a guy like, oh, in 2 weeks, let's get him on the radar gun and have him see a number that he's never seen before, and we'll go and create a little bit of buy-in, right? But at the same time, like you understand that there. I'm going to quote somebody that I don't know, but when the student is ready, the teacher will become open, right? And so
Is
sometimes
that
there
Mr.
are kids that
Miyagi? I think that's Mr.
I,
Miyagi.
it might be Mr. Miyagi, I don't know, but it's if there are we do get guys that want to like you said would sell their soul will sell their soul and then to get the next 10, and they come they leave, they don't really take care of it, and then they're doing it and their arm hurts, and they're, well, let me go back to the ranch, and they really were talking about that arm health. Now I'm more ready to hear that message, and that's going to happen, definitely. So it's not something I necessarily overly concern myself with. I always tell people I'm not going to be everybody's coach. I can't coach everybody. I'm
Yeah.
looking for the right fits for us, right? And for us, if you care about arm health, if you want to have your arm be healthy and durable for the extent of your career, that's who we are, and that's what we do. And then we try to gain the velo on top of that. If yes, it's a slower process, but at the end of the day, it's the right process in our belief for these young men.
Let's say that you're like working with a high school kid who's just, he's a middle of the road guy. He's got, 5 arm pain, normal arm pain that a kid would express.
Yeah.
Has dreams of playing college baseball, and wants to gain velo. Like what? Let's call him a sophomore, right? He's
Okay.
just getting into it. He really needs. He's like just on the beginning of his career there.
Okay.
How long can somebody like that expect to take in the onboarding, so to speak, of proper arm health and arm care and mechanics and stuff before you start pushing the gas pedal? Obviously, it's going to differ, but maybe just like a window. Like, how long have you
Yeah.
seen that take through
Yeah.
the thousands of kids that y'all have had?
It it also kind of depends on the time of the year that they come in, right? Because um, let's say he's an 85. Say he's 85 as a sophomore. That's I would say that's average to above average, just in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that I think is probably more difficult in just because of the area I live in is like
Y'all got
convincing people
dogs.
that convincing 85-mile-an-hour sophomores that they're okay. They're like,
Yeah.
I got this other guy in this area that's throwing at 92, and I'm like, that's fine, okay. But you go to Podunk Town, Iowa, his sophomore in high school is throwing at 72. It
Yeah.
averages out, right? So, and I think that's one thing. Like, if you look on PG, Perfect Game, I think they do pretty well. You can see the class averages for everybody, and so like you can look at the class average for your grade, and you can see like, oh, I'm in the 10th percentile, so I'm or in the 90th percentile, so I'm way above average. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think under creating that. So again, 85-mile-an-hour sophomore, 5 arm pain. It just kind of depends on what you see in the mechanical analysis, right? So if he's got let's say a 10 disconnection, which is a major disconnection for us, right? He might see gains in the next week or two because he's gonna get that instant feedback of like, wow, that actually makes my arm feel amazing. Okay, especially if it's in the upper half. Now on the other end of that, like let's say he's mechanically is pretty solid. And it's mostly lower half stuff he's got to work on. That's going to be a little bit more time consuming because the lower half is not only more difficult to feel and train, and it's also more difficult to transfer. Okay, so he might be in it for a little while. So he might be a 3 or 4 month project versus a guy that's has a major upper half that is probably like a more like a less than a month type thing until he starts seeing at least a little bit of progress in his stuff. Then you have to think about the time period, right? So, if they're in season, like in Texas, its season started a week ago, and they're going to play all the way for the most part through the end of July into August. Okay, so you've got to manage that, right? And so it's just got to be something that you continue to think about all the way through that as you're going. So it just depends on the kid, depends on the disconnection, depends on a lot of things. But I would say probably somewhere in on average the 6 to 8 week mark is you're probably looking at some kind of, whether that be a 1 or 2 mile an hour bump, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's discussed on the front end. You're like, hey, look, man, I'm gonna
Yeah,
be honest with you. I'm gonna be transparent. Like, we're not gaining probably any velo. We're not. That's not the goal for the first 6 to 8 weeks. If you
yeah.
gain some velo, cool. Are y'all even train? Are y'all even radaring velo at that point in time? Like, probably not,
Uh,
right? Just all
not
mechanical
not
work and
yeah, it's mostly mechanical work. I might do a little bit if they're in the off season and their arm pain is like a that we go from like a 5 to like a 2 pretty quickly. I might do a little bit just to let them keep them enticed a little bit. A little bit of marketing stuff, if you're going to be
yeah.
honest, um but
Well, the
at the end of the
athlete,
day,
it's
yeah,
marketing, but the
you got to
athlete
give them
has to
something.
be able to see. Yeah, they gotta. You
You
gotta
got to give
throw
them
your
something,
fighter
right?
a fight every now and then.
Yeah, you got to give them something, right? You can't just keep them on the sidelines and hope them to stay involved. So you give them a little bit, but the big win, always the big win for me in the first if I in the first 6 weeks, if I can get their arm pain, you know, let's say from a 5 to a 3, like to me that's the huge win. And regardless if they've gained any miles an hour, I just said like your arm's gonna feel better like throwing more. And I always tell people I can solve any problem you've got. Like whether you need to throw harder, you need to throw more strikes, you need to have a better breaking ball. Like we can solve all these problems if your arm is feeling 100%. Okay,
Yeah.
but the more your arm starts to nag you, you're feeling like meh. The harder it just becomes because you're just never going to throw enough to really develop that skill set.
Let's stay there real quick with the throwing enough. I think in high school, in the college world, let's take college and pro out of it, right? Because
Okay.
those dudes know we know what to do for the most part. If you're playing high level baseball, you know that you need to be throwing a certain amount of times a day. It's a part of your job. You're basically getting paid to do it, and so you're
Yeah.
more inclined to do it. When you're in high school, you don't necessarily have that drive to maybe throw every day or 5 days a week, but that's ultimately, and I'll let you answer this. My question is, how much should younger athletes, mainly high school athletes, be throwing? Because again, you and I think, sit under the same umbrella or the same philosophy of like, if you want to get better at throwing, like we
You
gotta
got to throw.
throw more. Like
Yeah.
we don't throw enough. I don't think people throw enough, and
No,
I
I
think
think
people
that's
are
a
scared of like throwing too much. But I think the throwing too much is so far. It'd be like you had to throw 300 times a day for 7 days in a row for like 2 years straight, and like
yeah.
that's too much, right? Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
so far from that. Little Johnny picking up the ball and throwing it
Yeah.
50 times a day into a net for every day is not gonna overdo it. So where are you at with like throwing and
Yeah.
volume,
Yeah.
things of that
So,
nature?
so Trevor Bauer is a friend of mine, and I met Trevor out here at the ranch when he was training here. We're the same age, so we kind of ran in a little bit of the same group around here. So Trevor, when Trevor started, he was in 8th grade, um, throwing at 78 miles an hour. Okay, so a slightly above average 8th grader, like no, but not an elite thrower. And in an 18-month period, he went from 78 to 93. So that's from a 8th grader, like the summer of his 8th grade year, to the springtime of his sophomore year. He went to from 78 to 93. And there was a 2 year period during that same time period that he only missed 5 days of throwing, okay, in a 2 year period. Okay.
Now 5 days of not throwing, or he missed
You
5 days on his schedule.
5 days of not throwing. So like he didn't, like, over a 2 year period, he only didn't throw a baseball for 5 days, right? And as a big part of what made him successful and what's made him who he is. So I think I think the biggest eye opening for guys is when they go from an eighth grader to the freshman year in high school, because up until eighth grade, for the most part, it's I throw twice a week at practice,
Yep.
throw prior to the games, and that's pretty much maybe a weekly lesson here with the coach, but that's pretty much all the throwing that I ever do. And then you get to high school, and all of a sudden you're starting to throw every single day, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so much throwing." And the truth of the matter is, though, that's what they do at the college level, and that's what they do at the professional level. You throw, I mean, you played professional baseball. You threw every single day from
Every day.
basically February through September, and you throw. And so now, all that being said, um, let's take it out. Let's take it outside the baseball world, so it's not so like close knit here. Can a guy squat in the weight room every day? The answer to that question is yes, but he cannot max out squat every single day, right? So I think that's like the misnomer with guys is when I say you throw every day, they think that we're radaring or going to the edge of our limits every single day, and that's not true. Okay, we're big on cycling. Just like if you want to squat every day, you can squat, but one day it can be back squat, another day can be a single leg squat. Another way will be body weight squats. Like you have to have these variabilities in there. So
Yep.
one day, so for us, it's 2 heavy days a week. Okay. So you get 2 high intense throwing days. And if you pitch once a week, that's one of your heavy days. And if you go throw a bullpen once a week, there's your other heavy days. Okay. So you have 2 high intense throwing days every week. All right. And a minimum of 48 hours in between. Okay.
Yep.
And then the day after a heavy day is going to be a light day. Okay, so that could be arm care, that could be light catch play, that could be light drill work, depending on that, right? So it's just a lower intensity, lower volume of throwing on that day. So you go your heavy days, then immediately after that is your 2 light days, and then you can have 2 to 3 medium days in between there, right? Depending on if you want to throw 6 days a week or 7 days a week. So that's what we try to really schedule in with our guys is, hey, we need to work on this stuff every day because that's the only way you're going to create change. Okay, but we also have to understand that you can't go to the max or the highest volume, highest workload every day, because no matter how good your mechanical efficiency is, if you try to go to the limits of your abilities every day, you're going to get hurt at some point. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think speaking on my own experience, understood that, but I didn't follow into that boat. I think for many people, it came down to my weighted balls, really. It wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
my catch play, it was my weighted balls. My catch play, I always kind of knew, hey, today's a heavy long toss day. Hey, today's a light catch day. But when I was doing drill work, I don't think I ever really threw weighted balls like super, super hard. There was a period of time where I definitely did. But like I'm talking about my plyo care balls, not
Yeah.
my 3 ounce pull down balls. So I think I threw my plyo care balls probably around like 80 to 90% every day, no matter what the day was. And I
Yeah.
think that led to me personally, like having arm fatigue, not being able to go the full length of a professional season without my arm just like aching on me because it was just like this. There was never an ebb and flow with it. My arm just
Yeah.
didn't know like, hey, today's a light day. It's like, oh, really? Because you just threw that ball at like 80 to 85%. Yeah, you played light catch, but the drill
Yeah.
work still
Yeah.
ramped you up. So we don't know the difference here.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing I live in the world I live in is that um, a light day for somebody could be a medium day for somebody else, or it could be a heavy day for somebody else. Right? That's the hard thing about this world I live in. That's why, one of the these one size fits all throwing programs that are out there are just so dangerous because it doesn't take into account everybody's the individual, which is what we're trying to do, right? And so, and the only way to kind of figure it out for yourself is to kind of trial and error it a little bit. Okay, we have some ideas and have some clues on what would be too much, right? But again, like a heavy day for somebody is somebody else's medium day, and even for you, like let's take you as an example, right? You finish your professional season in September. You usually take the month of September off. Like a heavy day for you in the month of October when we're just trying to ramp up is not going to be the same heavy day that we have in January when you're getting throwing your pins and doing it, right. Those are two completely different heavy days based on the time of the year that you're in. So it's these all these factors that you have to take into account that most people just don't.
And so how do you do that? It just sits in the education piece. It just sits in like the sitting
Ye-
there and talking to them for hours on hours, making sure that they fully understand.
Yeah, it's in the to me, you know, people call me coach, and I don't necessarily like that the most. I now understand why like professionals don't like being called coach because I don't really think of myself as a coach. I'm more in the relationship business than anything else, right? For me to really like get it down to the science and the art of it is I have to know somebody. Like I have like you know your second off season was probably much better than your first off season, and because there's always that period of time in that first off season where you and I are getting to know each other and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, how much is too much, what's not enough, right? And then that second off season, we kind of have already that kind of figured it out, hopefully a little bit, and then we can build upon that as we're going through it, right? Um, same thing with all the other guys that I work with, right? I know um, for my high school guy that is primarily an outfielder but pitches a little bit, like he's not a guy that is he's more susceptible to the volume aspect of it. Like he can throw pretty hard, but I got to manage his volume a little bit, right? And then the other guy another guy that I work with that is primarily pitcher. His thing is his volume is pretty good. He likes to vary the intensity in which he throws. Like so, him going a little bit lighter is and on the intensity, we can keep the volume the same though. But he's pretty good about that. So it's getting to know people and sitting down and like, okay, let's map this out. Let's map this out a little bit, and then it's that piece of like, hey, give me the feedback that we can have, and that's another thing that I really love about my job is that I don't write out any lineups. I don't have to decide who pitches when and where. My only job is to help one young man, whoever I'm working with, get better, get a little bit better that day. And so I get probably more information than necessarily his high school coach would do, right? No, most kids are not going to tell their high school coach that their arm's not feeling great and that they're not going to throw, right? That's not going to happen. At least I know I
Yep,
didn't ever really communicate that.
I definitely didn't.
So but they talk to me and they give me stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, you're giving me the feedback, and okay, your arm's still pretty good. Well, let's push it a little bit, and let's try to dial that up just a little bit. And then, oh, you're not okay. Well, let's stay even, or maybe take it back a little bit, just to make sure we're not overdoing it too much.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. I'm curious, maybe for another conversation, not today, but how y'all do that at scale and start to implement. And I'm sure it's tough, right? When you're trying to get to know everybody on like such a
No.
personal level, but then on the business side, how you trying to grow. I'd be more curious on like how you go from like individual, because I think individual lessons,
Yeah.
I think is the easiest thing to do, but also that's just not how teaching is done for the athlete, whether it be in school, whether it be in college, whether it be in
Oh,
pros. It's very seldom times that I feel like they're sitting in like just a one-on-one conversation. It's like a group
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So I'm
So,
curious on that.
yeah.
You know what I'm
So,
saying?
no, absolutely. Lessons are great. I think lessons are great for kind of two things. Number one, beginners, like guys that are new to the program, don't know what they're doing, and great to teach. Uh, Two, if a guy has a very unique issue, right? There's always going to be guys that don't necessarily follow the model, right? The things that you typically do aren't working for them, and so you got to bring them in a little separately because you can't let them like you want to work on it in the group, but you also can't let it distract from the group as well. Okay, so it's a little bit like that. So that's first thing where I think lessons have a role. But groups are the best. Competition breeds improvement. A rising tide lifts all ships. Okay, groups are where I really think development is happens at its best because it's you get enough kids in there where I'm not hovering over anybody. I don't have you sometimes when you're in a lesson you feel like you're hovering and you got to say something. Um, and because you're there and you feel that pressure. But in a group, like I've got to go work with this kid, and so now this other kid's left on his own to kind of figure it out for himself, right? And so you've got some self learning going on there too, which is I think is fantastic. So how do you scale it? The best way is to kind of categorize guys, right? Is start with okay, these guys over here are um, guys that are having arm pain. For us, anybody that's a 3 or higher that has reported to us a 3 or higher on their arm discomfort, we're going to put them in a special group. Like that's going to be, and their primary focus over there is to work on their arm health and durability, and we have a protocol for that situation. Okay, then we deal with everybody else. Okay, and then everybody else. Okay, are you more of a upper half guy, or are you more of a lower half guy? Okay, your major disconnection is on the upper half, so you're going to go into this group over here, and then you can divide the lower half into loading and unloading, stuff like that, right? So you just try to categorize the guys the best that you can, and that's how you scale it. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's way better than just having everybody do the same thing all the time. Okay,
Yeah.
we personalize the best that we can inside the group setting, and then again, when you deal with a guy for 4, 6, 8 weeks, then you can even personalize it inside of that group because you know him, right? But that's just like if you're listening to this and wondering where to start, just create some categories and funnel guys into it, and then kind of figure it out. And then as you start to know guys, and you can personalize inside the categories as best that you can. But that's where I would start if you're listening to this not knowing where. Just start with some different categories that you have. Like I said, for us, we immediately divide the group in half. If you got an arm pain of a 3 or higher, you're going to go into a special group. Everybody else is going to go to the performance side of it, right? Velo, command, secondary stuff. Okay, and then we divide those guys into upper half, lower half, loading, unloading, stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's break down some of those groups then for some of the people out there. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the majority of people who listen to this are college coaches and high school parents. I would say that's where I sit. So I'm curious to break it down. I would love for more high school kids and college baseball players. That's actually why I started the podcast, was to educate them. And then I was like, oh dang, I don't think I was listening to podcasts in high school or college, so why would I expect these kids to listen? So
Yeah.
a lot of high school parents and college coaches, so they can kind of understand a little bit more. And I think that's
Yeah.
even better because then if you educate the parents, like you said, it's a little bit easier for them to help their athlete along the way.
Yeah.
So what does like prototypical like you know what is a prototypical arm care protocol look like? What is a prototypical like command? What are you guys working on? I remember I went into a command phase my last season. I was like, I throw hard enough, my arm's healthy, like I just got to throw more strikes, like that's
Strikes.
the biggest thing. And then velo, like what are y'all, how are y'all separating and what are y'all doing there? I know how you're separating, but like what are y'all
Okay.
doing in those each individual groups? Maybe just a high level overview.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so let's assume the arm health is taken care of. Um, so we have different. Let's talk command, because I think that's the one that I think again is just kind of this misnomer of like the only time you work on command is is on the mound, right? And then in the games, right? That's where you work on command, and that can't be further from the truth, right? The analogy that we always use is you have to view the game as a test. You have to view your bullpens as quizzes and your daily throwing work as your homework,
Um,
right? If you don't do the homework, the quizzes aren't going to go well, and if you don't do the quizzes, the tests aren't going to go well. Okay, so like what you do on an everyday basis is way more impactful of your command than anything else, right? And so uh, one of the things that we do, um, when you were here, we had this big, they're called chaos training pads, and they had
mhm.
some little targets on them, but they were just still so big that it was really hard to distinguish what where you actually hit. So we got together with our
Talking
supplier,
about
Oat
the ones with the
Specialty.
number.
Yeah, the numbers. So we got with our suppliers and Oat Specialties,
And
and they created this thing called the Precision Pad, and it's
real
just
quick,
a
real
little.
quick, shout out to Oat Specialties. If you're listening to this podcast I wouldn't say a sponsor, but I am partnered with Oach Specialties, NJHH5. They do great work. They're down there, small company. They
Yeah.
everything that I use for my training, everything that the Texas Baseball Ranch uses, Oach Specialties. Those guys are amazing. I get a handwritten card every year from them. Shout out Gunner, great
Attaboy,
people.
Gunner. Yes. Yeah, fun fact: Gunner trained with me when he was trained out here and trained with me whenever we were going through it. So I've known
And now
Gunner.
he's
I've
in
known
sales,
Gun.
people, so you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what kind of trainer Massey is. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. Well, you can only do so much, right? No, I love Gunner. No, but now we have these little 8x8 targets that we now put on our screen. So now it's like you so now you miss, and all of a sudden, it's like you get that instant feedback of like, oh crap, I hit this. That sounded like me hitting the screen versus me hitting the pad. So you kind of get that more auditory feedback of like, did I actually hit my target, and then better. So that's step number one. Okay, like I always tell people, command. You want to talk about command 101? Like, have a target every time you throw, 100%. Okay, if you can't do that basic thing, like everything else I'm going to talk about doesn't apply. Okay, you have to have a if throwing strikes is keeping you or your kid or your player from being the best version, like they have to buy into that. I got to have a target every time I throw.
Now let me
Okay.
stop you there real quick because in the South and growing up in Texas, like it's so great because a lot of times throwing to a target is just throwing and playing catch with your a guy. You got
Yeah.
plenty of guys. You can go outside. I'm gonna take you up here to the north right now, where it is nasty.
Yeah.
It is. I'm learning firsthand like how hard it is to become a good baseball player because 6 months out of the year you're trapped inside. You can't really play catch with anybody. You're forced to throw like a ball into a net. You've got like a small window maybe in your small like place in your basement that your parents have designated like your throwing area. So like, what does a kid like that who's trapped in that type of environment do? Because obviously you can't really see true ball flight.
Yeah.
You're just trying to get your work in for a daily work. So what are you
Yeah.
doing? Just setting up X's on the wall or
Yeah, setting up, and for a guy like that who's really constrained, that's kind of where I go with like the command. Like the second level of command is your ability to make adjustments. Okay, um, so and this is probably like the soundbite that you're probably looking for is that nobody repeats their delivery the same way every single time. Okay. The idea that you can repeat the delivery the exact same way every time is a fallacy. Okay, but there is only one spot that's going to allow you to throw a strike. You know, inner half. There's only one release point that's going to get your fastball to the inner half, right? So what the great command pitchers do is they make these micro adjustments along the path because right, it's sometimes you lift your leg a quarter inch higher, right? And then that causes you to land a quarter second later or something like that. And so you've got to get really good at making these micro adjustments that allow you to get back to that release point that will help you throw a strike 60 feet 6 inches away, right? So what we do is we force players to make really big adjustments. So we'll take a screen or somebody up there that has only a little bit of space and put two targets on it, right? One over here and one over here, and then we'll have them, okay, take a baseball and throw it to that target, and then immediately take it and throw it to that target, right? And if you can get really good at making those big, because I mean, if you're 5 feet away and those targets are 3 feet away, like that's a huge adjustment when you
yeah.
extrapolate that over out to 60 feet 6 inches. Okay. And so if you can make that seamlessly, like your command's going to be a little bit better, right? And you can do the same thing up and down with targets. You can do the same concept with like different weighted balls. Like if you take a 10-ounce ball, hit a target, and then immediately put a baseball and hit the same target, like that's the same. It's the same concept. And then um, we do things. We obviously we're fortunate we have 20 acres out here, so we have a lot of space to do things, and so we'll get guys up slopes, down slopes, like downhill lies where your toes are higher than your heels, uphill lies where your toes right, and so all of that is just training a young man's ability to make adjustments and adaptations because that's what I think we get on them. we get going to the singular target all the time, right? Okay. And yeah, we're really good at doing that, but that's just creating and what we would call an adapted athlete. Like I'm really good at hitting this target that's 5 feet away from me. Okay, that's not necessarily going to help transfer to me throwing 60 feet 6 inches away, right? But the ability to make adjustments or the ability to be adaptable into different situations is what makes somebody throw more strikes.
That's great, dude. I love that. I love that answer from you. But now, what about on the velo side? How are y'all pushing the envelope there, and like how are you taking a kid whose arm pain? Let's again assume that arm pain's good, mechanics are, in a place where they're efficient enough. And yeah, you're probably always going to be coaching somebody's mechanics,
Yeah.
even at the highest level, right? Jacob DeGrom,
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani, they're working on their mechanics daily. But let's assume that their mechanics are good enough to keep pushing forward. What is
Yeah.
what is a velo program,
Yeah.
or
So
is it even a
I mean,
program?
so no matter what, like you're only going to be able to push the envelope so many times a week, right? And again, that's a heavy day for us. So you're looking at twice a week tops. Okay. So every other day you can be working on your movement pattern and your delivery and your mechanical efficiency, right? Because if you can get more energy and a more dynamic lower half, right? That's also going to be um help you throw harder, right? And so that's where and then there's two versions of it, right? You can go out and play max long toss, or you can get on the gun. You can get on a radar gun and radar it. We typically stay away from on mound radars, just because for the vast majority of guys, right, they're never going to get to a level in a bullpen that is close to the game. Like I think the best example of this is did you ever meet Colin Poche when you were out here,
Oh
lefty
yeah,
Poe?
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Poe.
the
I
homie.
mean,
I
it's
saw him in Tampa. I went and visited him 2 years ago too.
okay.
He was playing in Tampa, and I was just there for a bachelor party, and
Okay.
I just said what's up to him
Nice.
too. So, ranch guys.
Yeah, through and through, man. But so Poe. I mean, when I tell you guys, it took everything he had to pop a 91. I mean, it took soaking wet, like run, mount, like hype up, like just everything he had to hit a 91. Most of the time, like even his pins, he was 89, 90. Like, and then he would go in a game and sit 93, 94, touch a 95. And
Yeah,
I think his best ever is like 97. So
yeah,
like you just can't like for a lot of guys they just like them trying to radar in a bullpen to really push that envelope. It just doesn't work because they can't tap into that competitiveness that they get from being in a game, batter in the box, umpire behind the plate, dirt mound, cleats, all of that stuff.
yeah.
So we
I
typically
tell kids
go
all the
with
time too, because I was the same way with you guys. I would come and I'd be like 88, 89. And I'd be like, Massey, like you messed me up this offseason. I'm going into spring training. I'm gonna get cut immediately, dude. Like this ain't gonna fly. And then first pitch in spring training was always like 93, 95, somewhere in there, and be like, all right,
yeah.
cool,
I'm
we back.
good. I don't have it. No. So you can't replicate that. And so we go with things like turn and burns or running guns and stuff like that. Um, because that's just number one, it's different than the mound. Number one, it's different than the mound, so that they don't because again, a kid like you just said, like all of a sudden you're freaking out because you're supposed to be 93, 95, and you're 88, 90. Now just imagine a 16-year-old kid who does like, oh my god, I just lost 5 miles an hour. Like that doesn't sit well for them. So it's different than the mound. Number two, sometimes as they say, you got to walk before you can run, right? If you can't, very few guys, and I can only think of one in the history that I've been out here, you know, throw couldn't run and throw it 90 before they hit 90 off the mound, right? So if you can't run and throw it 90 miles an hour, like the odds of you hitting 90 miles an hour on the mound are very slim. Not saying it's
Yeah,
impossible, just slim, right? So it's a little bit of showing of what you're capable of doing. Okay, like you have it in you, like your arm, you just threw a baseball 90 miles an hour, like you're capable of doing it. So it's a lot like the analogy we always use here is it's like running downhill. Like you got to teach your arm to move faster, just like a sprinter and runners have to teach their legs to move faster, and the only way to do that is by running downhill or running and throwing a baseball. Like you're teaching that capacity to throw, and I think it's also, you're letting your arm be free. You're freeing yourself up, and you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the clip, but we show it, and I'm sure it's probably on YouTube somewhere. But there's a clip of Julian Merriweather, who his announcers are talking about him. And so those who don't know, Julian Merriweather was really, I think he's still in the league. I don't know if he's still in the league, but he's been probably like an eight to 10 year MLB pitcher reliever, right? He came here going into his senior year at I want to say Oklahoma City College, um, and he was 88 to 91, 88 to 91. Three comes to one of our boot camps over the summer, and he pulls down 100 miles an hour. Okay, and next thing you know, the next year he's 94, 96, and drafted, and makes it all the way to the makes it all the way to the bigs. Now, did that one pull down help him throw it 94, 96 the next year? I don't know. I'm sure, and I should say this. Julian deserves all the credit for that in the world, for the work he probably put in to do that. Like, I'm not saying that the text, right? All we did was we showed him a path. We probably took the keys off like he was already probably capable of throwing 94, 96. He just was caught in a system of not being able to showcase it for whatever reason. And when we let him do the turn and burns, we let him do the pull downs, it took the governor off the engine and it freed him up for whatever reason. And then he put in the work in the offseason. I don't know what he did, I'm sure a lot of other stuff, but he put the work in it and he developed himself to that guy that eventually was able to get drafted into the big leagues. But a lot of, he was just capable of doing it so much more. And that's, again, why we do the pull downs. That's a reason why we do pull downs, right? Is because it shows you what, it gives you that ability to let yourself be free, take the keys off, take the governor off the engine a little bit, and what comes out is what comes out.
Now, is everybody, in your opinion or in the ranch's philosophy, is everybody eligible to do turn and burns and running guns, or where is that threshold of like, hey, you need to be built up, hey, you need to have certain mechanical efficiencies figured out, or is it just like,
Huh?
hey, if you've been throwing and you're a youth kid, like this is going to be good, or where is that line drawn for that? Because I think for a lot of parents, they're seeing, that's like one of the biggest things that you'll see on social media, right? Is the turn and burns
Yeah,
and the running guns,
the
and that's
run
the
guns.
max. And then people will do what? They'll take what they see and they'll be like, hey, we should go, see how hard you
Yeah,
can throw in the backyard
yeah,
today. And then it's just like, well, shit,
yeah.
like that didn't
Now,
work.
now,
My kid's hurt now.
yeah. So the a great analogy for this is if I went out and ran a marathon tomorrow, having never trained for a marathon, and I got hurt, was it because I was overworked or underprepared? The answer is I was underprepared, right? If you haven't been throwing for 3 months and your first day is like, let's do turn and burns, and you get hurt, it's had nothing to do with the turn and burns, had everything to do that you were underprepared for the task at hand. So yes, simply put, you have to be ramped up. I would say minimum 6 to 8 weeks of throwing, where you're rotating through your heavy days, light, medium, heavy days of 4 to 6 weeks, in that, 6 to 8 weeks on total, right? The younger the kid, I'd give him the more time I'd give him. Um, and then for us, an arm health scale. So for us, I always tell guys, for anybody, for us to talk about a velo program, your discomfort in your arm has to be less than a 3 for 3 weeks. Okay, going through these light, medium, and heavy days of throwing. Okay, if you can go 3 weeks of where your arm pain is less than a 3, we'll talk about a radar. We'll talk about a velocity program. Okay, and so that's always going to be our primary thing. So it's not necessarily a mechanical efficiency thing. I do take that into account a little bit, right? But at the same time, you know, sometimes a guy, you know, what's the difference between a forearm flout and a four forearm flout or a five forearm flout, right? Would I be like him to be closer to 3? Maybe. but at the same time, like maybe that's not him, right? Um, some guys are not. That's just the way the good Lord built them to work, right? Some guys right at 90 degrees, other guys more inside. So it's just how it goes. All right. Um, so for us, it's just more of what's your arm discomfort like, and has it been good for the last 3 or 4 weeks? And if you say it's been good, then we'll talk about a velo program, and then from there, it kind of depends on the age of the kid, what lever I pull. Sometimes I guess especially here in Texas where the weather is so good, for a younger kid, like an age an age, 9 to 12 year old, like I'm probably way more inclined to talk about a long toss program, you know, something like that versus the radar program, just because you don't want to have to pull that trigger so early. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's always going to be diminishing returns, right, on the same stimulus. And so if you try to pull that trigger at age 12, um, it's going to be less effective at age 15 or 16, when maybe you really need it a little bit more than you did at age 12.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tend to on the earlier side go with the with a well long toss program, and maybe a little bit of radar work towards the end, just to, again, give them a little bit. But I'm not really. It's not something we're doing week in and week out like I would with like somebody who's 15, 16, 17 years old that kind of needs the radar gun a little bit more.
Yeah. And y'all are still operating with the Jaeger long toss program. That's pretty much the bread and butter for, or are
Yeah,
y'all kind of moving away from
I
that?
would say I would say we're Jaeger-esque. Like we've taken his concepts and applied them differently. Like we're still the overarching principles are the same. We're slow and on an arc on the way out, fast and on a line on the way in. So if you're familiar with Jaeger, that's the same stuff. We just do it maybe a little bit differently. We do a little bit more of our own drills inside of that concept versus what he does. But yeah, the overarching principle is the same.
So for a parent who's out there right now whose kid wants to, throw harder and is looking to get on an arm care program or a throwing program and doesn't want to necessarily seek out the help of somebody and they want to try to do it on their own, how do you structure that? What does, like, a small easy build up look like for them? Obviously you can't speak facts, and like by no means
Yeah,
am I going to put you on record and say
yeah,
like, hey, this is exactly what you should do. But again, I think there's a lot of
yeah,
families out there who maybe can't afford to go get a pitching coach, or can't, and so they're
yeah,
trying to figure it out any way possible, which is why I started this podcast in the first place, is to just give them some form of general direction that's safe
yeah.
that they can take.
Um, yeah. Um, my initial instincts is to find, you know there's always a risk. Like, I let's go outside the baseball world, like let's finance, right? If I'm gonna go try and do financial stuff on my own, right? um there's a risk that I get it wrong, and some guys are willing to take that risk, some guys are not. So my hope in my is telling the parent is like, there's a ton of, like, this podcast, there's a lot of free information out there. This podcast, Cressy does a solid job of talking about stuff. And then, seek out as many guys as you can find, and as much information as you can find, and build the best that you can. um, I would say, if for being as general as I can, um, I long toss is very solid. I don't see. Can you get hurt doing long toss? Yes, I just don't see it as often as I would see. I don't see it as often as in, let's say, a velocity program. But a way to mitigate a little bit of risk is to make sure the kid, what we'd call, is own the spot, right? If you can't if you can't hit your target 5 times in a row, and we give our guys one step, so like one step in any direction, we count as a hit, okay? But if you can't do that 5 times in a row, you don't back up, right? Because let's take the concept, right? If you can throw a baseball 350, 400 feet, and you hit your partner 5 times in the face, you're probably moving pretty efficiently, right? That doesn't happen by accident. So
Yeah.
the way you can kind of protect yourself and protect a young man is in a long toss program like this would be make sure that they can own the spot before they back up. Don't just let them keep backing up when they're scatter patterning all the ball all over the place, right? Um, I would always advocate for seeking out somebody. You know, the Texas Baseball Ranch. Obviously I know the cost, and I know there's a lot of out of a lot of people's budgets, but we have velo programs. We have programs on that you can purchase, that you can buy, that it's not going to be as good as coming out here and getting the information, but it's a little bit of a resource for you as you try to navigate your way through this velocity enhancement journey that you're undertaking.
Love it. Love it. Great answer right there, man. Great answer right there. We're kind of at the hour spot. I try to keep
Yeah,
these an hour long.
yeah.
Kind of go through a couple more and then we'll end it here. We'll just go through a quick rapid fire of some questions for you.
Okay.
What do you think right now is an overrated tool that you're seeing out there? You want to go on
I,
record with that?
no, the way I view things is this.
Probably not
Okay,
an O specialty tool.
this is probably the most political correct answer you're going to get out of me. Is that any tool you can see out there, there's probably somebody that can use it. But any tool out there is also very dangerous at the same time. And I say the same thing about our tools. Okay, our connection balls, our clubs, our socks. If you miss, it's like a hammer. Is a hammer a very good tool? Absolutely. Can a hammer be very dangerous? Absolutely. Okay, so any tool misused or misapplied can be very dangerous, and I'm sure just about any tool out there can be helpful to somebody somewhere, right? So, you know, treat every tool like that. Is what I would say.
Yep. What's something that you think a pitcher should stop doing? Just like
Uh,
in general,
ge- Generic throwing
generally.
programs.
Yep.
Generic throwing
Get them
programs.
gone.
Get
What's
get them as
something? What's
personalized as you
something?
can.
Yeah. What's something that you think every pitcher could implement? Is there anything that you think every pitcher could have in their program?
I think a really good. I think especially for the youth parents, a really good warm up. I think um I think we don't do a well enough job of doing getting our kids warmed up enough. We throw to warm up. We don't warm up to throw. And then number two, have a sock in the bag, the Dirt Throw socks from O Specialties, because the way it works, I'm sure it's the same up there in the Northeast, is that you're in these weekend tournaments, you're playing, these games get backed up, you're throwing, so you got basically 5 to 10 minutes in between each game to get everybody warmed up and ready to go. Like that's just not enough time. Like get a sock, have it in the bag. Like you can do just pretty much a lot of throwing in the sock out in a very little space next to the field, and that way you can go basically get on the field and polish the rock a little bit, so you're not having to go from basically sitting around doing nothing and then to fully warmed up in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Can you explain the sock real quick to those that don't know? I posted, obviously, again, I'm an advocate of Oat Specialties and I use their products in some of my videos. And some of my videos with the sock have gone viral. And, I'll get a ton of comments about people just like pooping on the sock because, oh, you can't see ball flight or, oh, how does that train a kid? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, go over what the sock is and how that even helps a young athlete with their throwing, their durability, and also just overall, baseball skill
Yep.
work.
Yeah. So so the sock came about, and I'm gonna get it. It was designed by kind of three people: Robert Oates with Oates Specialties, Randy Johnson with the Florida Baseball Armory, and Ron Wolforth
No, Randy
with
Sullivan. Randy Sullivan.
yeah
Randy
yeah Randy.
Johnson.
Oh, sorry, did I say Randy Johnson? Randy Sullivan.
Randy
Sorry, Randy
Johnson.
Sullivan. Randy Sullivan with the Florida Baseball Armory, and Ron Wolforth with the Texas Baseball Ranch. Those three guys are the guys that really came together to design and formulate this dirt throw sock, right? Um, and so what it is, it's a concept, and if you really want to go back to it, it goes back to Tom House and his Holds program, right? And so the story is, and I don't know how this is the story I heard. You can fact check me on this. I don't know if this is a factual story or not, but there's this guy that had like two or three elbow surgeries, just out of baseball, doing construction, and wants to try to get back into it. But every time he tries to throw, he's like, it hurts, right? And so the only thing you can really do is take the ball, hold on to it, and do it. and when he holds onto it, it feels good. So he starts throwing like 4 pound balls, 2 pound balls, like just holding onto it as he's doing it, right? And sure enough, like as the story goes, 18 months later, he's back throwing 97 and in the big leagues, right? Again, I don't. That's the story I heard. I don't know how true that is, but that's where the concept of holds that Tom House took and built upon. Okay. Now, when we saw guys doing holds, the big downside of it was you don't get very much layback. Okay, and so the you hold on to it, and you just don't get you don't the arm does not go into very much layback because you're not going to release the ball. So we were seeing kind of a negative blend on that side of it. And so what we did and what those three guys did was they came together on what's a way that we can hold on to the ball but still throw it. And that's where the sock was born. Okay? The sock, so it attaches to the wrist. You have a baseball in it or a weighted ball in there and you throw it and it hits the end of the sock. And so it stays on your wrist and the weight stays on your arm the whole time. So basically what it does is as that sock hits or as the ball hits the end of the sock, your body gets this kind of shock to the system of this distraction of pulling that shoulder forward, and naturally you resist it. So it teaches a kind of a really good deceleration pattern without even trying to do it. Okay, so that's the number. That's the way the sock was born. But as everything, we saw multiple uses of it. So we used it for arm care. We used it to teach a good deceleration pattern. We use it for guys who have to throw in their living room because it's raining outside. Okay, there's a ton of uses for the dirt throw sock, but it's just a canvas bag that secures around your wrist that you can throw inside of. Yes, you can't see ball flight. And so I'm not saying I don't advocate to throw your entire throwing program in it unless you have to. Like you got to see ball flight at some point. But, I would much rather, if you can't get outside and throw, I would much rather you throw in the sock for a day and so that you can get your throwing in and your drill work in rather than miss a whole day of throwing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, love it, dude. Love it. This has been
No problem.
great. First off, I've loved seeing your beautiful face. I love seeing the beautiful ranch back there, dude. It looks so nice. I'm looking at snow on the ground still out here. So just seeing a nice, clear blue Texas sky is
Yeah.
awesome. I
Yeah.
think I
Don't,
told you,
don't,
man, I would love to. Go ahead.
yeah. Don't let me piss you off and say because it's 75 and sunny today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a high of 30 something today. So that's warm. That's starting to get to shorts weather for me at this point. Anything in the single digits is below freezing now, and anything 30 is like, it's kind of warm out. Um, I kind of told you I'd love to come down there, man, and just, obviously my dad and family living in Huntsville, just right down the road, would love to just come for a weekend, just kind of be a fly on the wall, help out in any way that I can. But I don't think I've ever seen, I've partaken in a camp as like a demonstrator,
Yeah.
and like, was a guy like that, but I've never really seen a camp through and through. So one of these days, I'd love to come down there and just check it out and see what you guys are about. Get back to the ranch somehow, some way.
Absolutely, man. You're welcome anytime.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Well, appreciate your time. Where can people follow you at? How do they get in contact with you if they want to
Uh,
know more about the ranch?
the ranch. You can follow the ranch. The ranch's the handles are at TX Baseball Ranch. For the most part, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, Twitter. Follow us there. You can follow me at JMAS1711, but I don't really tweet or do much on there. So it's the
Yeah,
ranch is where you're going to find a lot of the information about what we do. So again, that's at
I'll drop
TX
that in the
Baseball
links
Ranch.
below. I'll drop that
All
in
right,
the
buddy.
description below. Yep. All right, man. Well, tell everybody I said hello. Tell Ron I said hello. If he remembers me, I don't even think I've worked with Ron. Just big John
That's,
Massey there. And then tell Robert Duggar I said what's up too.
I
Hopefully he's
will. I will.
where's he at?
So he's been,
Back to
you know,
Mexico.
yeah, he's gonna
I
head
saw
back
he's
to
in Japan
Mexico.
a little bit.
Yeah, he went to Korea for a minute.
Oh,
He's been
Korea.
in and out. He's been in and out. He's been in and out of affiliated baseball the last couple of years. He's just kind of in this weird position of his life that I think I think he's good enough to be. I think he's good enough to be in the affiliated baseball. He's just kind of one of a lot. So it's
Yeah,
like you got to find a way to separate yourself a little bit, and that's what we're working on doing all the time is continue to separate ourselves from the group.
yeah. And he's already been up there in the big leagues, so at
Yeah.
least he's got that under his belt. So awesome. Keep working with him. I hope to see his face on the TV again soon, and I hope to see you guys soon. Best of luck to you guys out at the ranch. Continue doing all the great work, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Best of luck to you, man. It's good to see you again.
All right, brother.
Peace.